Here with more Sara Fischer, who covers the media industry for Axios. Sara, great to have you as always. Good to see you. So break this down. How does Trump's campaign spending compare to the Democratic field at this point?
Well, if you take a look at the top spenders, so that would be Elizabeth Warren and Kamala Harris, the Trump campaign is outspending them about 9-1. So it's a dramatic difference. He's right now poured about, $3.5 million into Facebook ads since December 30th, about $1 million into Google ads. And the reason that's a big deal is because it's unprecedented. If you take a look at the way candidates, incumbents, have spent traditionally at this point in time, leading up to a re-election campaign, they're not spending this much money on digital. But as we know, the Trump campaign is different. They come from a different mentality, different leadership, and so expect them to twist the rules.
So Sara, why Facebook for Trump? Why does Facebook matter more so than any other platform?
Facebook is really easy to experiment. So you could throw up a bunch of different pieces of ad creative, and you can actually optimize them, test them, adjust them, what works in what state, what works with what demographic. And you can gather a lot of data that way. So for example, let's say you're targeting people around the whole country, which is what the Trump campaign is doing, with a message of optimism. Look, my tax plan has been really effective and has been great. And it's not resonating well. Well, you might then gather data to say, look, let's not focus our TV ads on that kind of stuff. But let's say you're focusing an ad that's on Trump's character and it's doing really well. Then you might have a new insight into how you do TV ads in the future or radio ads in the future. So what Facebook is really good for, especially in these early days, is experimentation, testing, and gathering insights for future campaigns and, quite frankly, advertising techniques.
Trump has, and Republicans have been critical of platforms like Facebook, of course, for alleging that there's a conservative bias against conservative voices. Is this a little bit ironic in a way, or interesting to think about in that they are using this platform that they have criticized thus far?
Yes, well, I mean, the Trump campaign and some of the Democrats have criticized these platforms for very different reasons. The Trump campaign alleges that there is a systemic bias in the way that these platforms program their algorithms to be biased against conservatives. We've never seen substantial proof of that. We have seen one-off instances where platforms make mistakes. We saw that Facebook accidentally categorized Donald Trump's social media director as being a bot, and so he was temporarily unable to leave comments. But we don't know, and we haven't seen any proof that the platforms actually have bias against conservatives. What I always tell people when they say that is that, look, these platforms make tons of money selling ads to conservative groups. It's actually against their business interests to have any sort of political bias. On the Democratic side, however, you see something totally different. You have folks like Elizabeth Warren who say, break up big tech, it's so big. And yes, while there's an irony that she's using this platform, she's actually spending more right now on Facebook and Google ads than any other Democratic contender. It kind of plays into her argument. What she's saying is, look, these platforms are so massive, they're utilities. You can't help but use them, which is why I have to buy the Facebook ads on them. So their arguments against big tech are very different. I'd actually say at this point, what Elizabeth Warren is saying, what the Democrats are saying, probably there's a little bit more truth to that. You hear regulators around the world saying we should take a look and revisit antitrust laws around how big these companies are, but there's no proof from what Donald Trump is saying and what some Republican lawmakers are saying that's been proven that these platforms have bias against conservatives.
Sara, if someone was scrolling through their Facebook feed, right, obviously Facebook since the 2016 election coming under a lot of heat for misinformation, fake news, all of these things being spread on Facebook. And so how would they identify a Trump ad versus fake news versus a news story when scrolling through their feed?
That's a very good point. So that's on Facebook. I mean, Facebook has to use technology engineering and policies to make it easy for a user to understand what's an ad and what's not. And the Federal Trade Commission is, the ones that's responsible for putting out guidelines for platforms and news publishers like Cheddar or Axios to adhere to. So what does Facebook do? They have a sponsored headline on all of their ad posts. They actually try to have them pop out sometimes with a little bit of a separation of color. You have to have certain distinguished features so that a user does not get confused if this is an ad or a news story. Also, when it comes to news stories, Facebook's trying to do better about helping users identify which outlet they come from by putting the outlet's logo there. So yes, it can be challenging on one platform to get ads and to get news articles, but I'd remind everyone that has those concerns, the same thing happened in print. We would have ads for candidates in the New York Times print pages, right next to articles about them. It's just a matter of making sure you're transparent with your users.
Sarah, really quickly here, you mentioned in your report Facebook ad spend by all candidates far outpacing Google ad spend. Should Google be worried in general about Facebook getting more market share in the ad space?
No, they shouldn't. I mean, Google, quite frankly, has a much bigger ad business with their search business. Search is just not the type of thing that you're going to use for a national political campaign. What you want to use for a national political campaign is you want to have ads that help drive conversation. And where people have a lot more conversation around national politics and law and government is Facebook, not Google. Google is really good for people who need to look facts and hard news. So maybe it's technology or business, but Facebook is where you go if you want to talk about community and politics. So Google shouldn't be worried. It's just a different use case. The one thing I'll say, though, is that Google's YouTube is a really valuable place for election advertising. Right now, you're not going to see a campaign invest in a YouTube takeover. They don't need to have that sort of direct response right now. But leading up to primaries and debates, expect to see YouTube utilized a lot.
Right.
Okay, Sara Fischer, who covers the media industry for Axios, thank you for breaking it down for us.
Thanks for having me.